What's up, hello? My name is Emma, and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the books that I read in November and December. Yes, this wrap-up is a little delayed. And I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts on the 8 books and 2 novellas that I finished at the end of last year. The first book I read in November was Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. I listened to this on audiobook through my local library. This book follows a boy named Marvin who goes to a party with his twin brother named Tyler, which ends in a shooting, and the next day Tyler has gone missing. I enjoyed Tyler Johnson Was Here. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. I don't think the writing of this book is particularly spectacular, but I did really enjoy Marvin's voice as a character. He's very authentically teen. I really enjoyed getting to see the expression of things like his grief and anger. And I also really appreciated the character dynamics in the story. Each person in Marvin's life has a unique relationship to him, and it was just really wonderful to see. And I think it's great that we have so many more books in the young adult world coming out about serious issues like racism and police brutality. You know, these stories are so important to be in the hands of teens, and I love the way that they've been approached in fiction lately. But I have to say Tyler Johnson Was Here was not as impactful for me. I overall came away from the story feeling like it was very stagnant. I love a book that's going to play with my emotions. I want to feel happy and sad and angry and empowered and a range of different things, but Tyler Johnson Was Here was just like melancholy all throughout. It just wasn't a super memorable novel for me. I've read quite a few books that are very similar, and I just don't think this one stacks up, but nonetheless, I am still really glad I read it. The next book I read in November is Archenemies by Marissa Meyer, which is the sequel to Renegades, and I listened to this on Audible. And you may be saying to yourself, Emma, I thought you read Archenemies months ago. You've talked about this in a wrap-up before. And you're right. So I read Archenemies before it was released because I got an ARC from the publisher, but then after the book was released, I really wanted to listen to the audiobook because Renegades is one of my all-time favorite audiobooks, so I reread it and listened to the audiobook. Some might say it's a little extra, but I say it's a lot of fun. Renegades took me by storm last January, and all year I was just waiting for Archenemies to release, and it did not disappoint in any sense of the word. I thought it was a fantastic sequel. To me, Marissa Meyer is just such a talented author in my opinion. I feel she is very well-rounded in her craft because just every single element of her stories always hit it on point for me. She has this cast of beautifully complex characters in a super creative and innovative world. It has the best slow burn romance I have ever read in a young adult series. The plot is extremely thrilling with so many twists and turns that you won't expect, and I think the political arc in this series is magnificent. Everything is really expanded upon in Archenemies, and there are so many complex moral questions to be answered and difficult situations our characters are put into that I just could not ask for anything more in a book. Renegades and Archenemies are of course on my favorite books of 2018 list. It has just really stolen my heart in an unexpected way. And I know I'm super behind on videos, but I do have a full spoiler-filled, super gushy review coming for Archenemies, so I hope you guys are caught up and will discuss it with me. In November, I also read Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows. I believe I read these for the 3rd time each. Honestly, I don't think I really need to talk about them in this wrap-up. I've talked about them in 3 wrap-ups before. I have dedicated reviews to both of them. You can find my thoughts on my channel. And let's be real, you only really care to hear my thoughts on Queen of Air and Darkness, so I think we can just move past these real quick. Next in November, I read 2 novellas, which happened to be the last 2 novellas of the Ghosts of the Shadow Market series, The Land I Lost and Through Blood Through Fire by Cassandra Clare. I really enjoyed both of these. The Ghosts of the Shadow Market novellas have been like real big hit or misses with me. I guess they never miss, huh? I gave The Land I Lost 4.5 out of 5 stars and Through Blood Through Fire 4 out of 5 stars. The Land I Lost was just so cute and funny. It's basically like the origin story of little Raphael and how he comes into the story. We get to see so much of his personality, and he is just so hilarious and sarcastic and snarky. He's just like the most wonderful 5-year-old in all of existence, and I just want to protect him with my life. And we also get to see more of Lily Chen, who is like my favorite underrated character in the entirety of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. She is just such great comic relief in every scene. She's got a lot of development now in her own storylines, and I just really hope we can still see more of her in future books. If you haven't caught on, it's really difficult to talk about these novellas because they are so deep into the Shadowhunter Chronicles that almost anything feels like a spoiler. But the ending of The Land I Lost is so heartwarming and emotional. It's just really beautiful in every sense of the word, and I promise you, like, those of you who love the Shadowhunter Chronicles the way I do, you will be so satisfied by this story. And Through Blood Through Fire was good. It wasn't my favorite, but it also was not my least favorite out of all of the novellas so far. I've mentioned in previous reviews that I'm way more invested in the storylines of like the additional characters that are in this novella series as opposed to Brother Zachariah's main storyline. But I did come around in the end, and out of all of the novellas that like really focus on Brother Zachariah, this one was my favorite. It is super emotional and very intense. Like, it was one of those reading experiences where I just felt like there was a weight on my shoulders until it was done and I could just breathe. I promise you will get all the TID feels, and it's just another same beautiful, heartwarming ending. I really love the way that this novella particularly left off. If you didn't know, we are still getting 2 more novellas when the bind-up of this series comes out. So I have to say, for my final thoughts on the novella series, it's not my favorite of the novella series. Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy is still on top, but I think it does take over the Bane Chronicles because my favorites are like my favorites. Based on these 8 stories, I'd say the bind-up is at like a solid 4 stars for me, but we'll have to see what happens with the following 2 novellas. Before we get to my very short December wrap-up, the final book I read in November is Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. To be candid, I was paid by the publisher to read this book in November. I posted a reading vlog that was sponsored by Penguin Teen. I will say they did want to include a sponsored wrap-up as a part of my role in that paid campaign, but I declined the wrap-up. So to be clear, my current thoughts are not sponsored. Penguin doesn't know I'm making this wrap-up anyways. I just wanted to make that clear. Give the Dark My Love is all about a girl named Nedra who wants to study alchemy in order to stop a plague from spreading in her community. So she gets a scholarship to a really prestigious school where she's sort of the outsider, as she comes from a poor community that is heavily affected by this illness. And through Nedra's determination to stop this plague, she gets involved in some deep, dark dealings such as necromancy, and she's not sure if she will be able to pull herself back before she goes too dark herself. I was a little nervous going in to Give the Dark My Love because I haven't read a new high fantasy novel in quite a hot minute, but I was really surprised with how much I ended up liking it. I gave it, I think, 3 out of 5 stars. I really loved Nedra as a main character. I think she was definitely my favorite thing about the book. She just really embodies what it means to be a strong female character in the way that she uses her intellect to solve her problems and the way that she is so committed and passionate about helping others. And she's also a really complex, unique character too. If you are someone that loves reading about morally ambiguous characters and the type of people who are so heavily impacted by the circumstances that they're in that their view of morals starts to change, you will definitely enjoy this book because Nedra's character goes to some amazing places that were really entertaining to read about. And I also really enjoyed the discussion of classism in this book. I did not expect it to have a strong political arc in that sense, but the way that Nedra is treated by her peers and even some of her instructors, the way that people view her based on the place that she comes from is just really interesting, and I think it was done perfectly in this book. I do think pretty much everything in this book besides Nedra's character really could have benefited from a little bit more development. Same goes for side characters. Like, Nedra really carried this story because the majority of other characters were very one-dimensional in my opinion. I think the romance started off nice. Like, it was really refreshing to read about 2 lovers in a YA story that like don't hate each other immediately and treat each other badly. They're very polite, and it's very clear from the beginning that they just like think the other person's cute, and so it was very innocent in that sense, and I really liked that. Unfortunately, that's like the extent of the romance. It wasn't really developed upon, and I just felt like beyond them like having this interest in alchemy and this dedication to studying, I just don't feel like they had a lot in common, and there was no reason for them to be dating. I would have been down for them being like casual friends, but I was just severely underwhelmed by Gray's character in general. He is like set up to be an important main character. Like, the beginning of the story has chapters alternating evenly between Nedra's perspective and Gray's, but halfway through the book, Gray like just drops off the face of the planet and it's just only Nedra's perspective, and we have like no idea what's going on with Gray. And then when they're both united and Gray is like introduced back into the story, he's still like super irrelevant. So I think I probably would have enjoyed this book more if it was like just from Nedra's perspective and there was definitely more effort put into Gray's character. But I am really happy I read it. I found myself more intrigued reading it than I expected, and so I definitely think I'd consider picking up book 2 because I just love Nedra so much. Moving on to the December wrap-up, the first book I finished in December is The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. This was a reread for me. I listened to it on Audible because I listened to the audiobook last December because it is just like the perfect Christmassy book, and I could not get through the Christmas season this year without a reread. Beyond that, I did not just reread this book once. I finished it and immediately started it again and finished it. So I actually finished 9 books this month because I read The Afterlife of Holly Chase twice in a row, making it 3 times total. The Afterlife of Holly Chase is this sort of reimagining / expansion on the story of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The story follows a girl named Holly who is visited by 3 ghosts on Christmas Eve who tell her that she needs to change her ways or else she's going to die. Holly doesn't believe them, she dies, and 5 years later she finds herself working at this organization called Project Scrooge, where people essentially recreate the story of A Christmas Carol all throughout the year for one Scrooge in order to help them change their path. I love The Afterlife of Holly Chase so much. I got an unbelievable amount of messages from you guys this December of you picking up The Afterlife of Holly Chase and reading it because I have been raving about it literally for a year now, and I'm so happy about that. This story is just so enchanting and addicting. I don't know what it is about it, but I literally have not been able to stop thinking about it since December 2017. It is just one of the most memorable books I think I have ever read. Holly is such a great character because she is mean and selfish and unlikable, but there is something about her that just makes you want to keep rooting for her to have a happy ending and for her to live a more fulfilling life, which makes the story super fun and interesting to follow. The atmosphere of this book is incredible. It has this super unique blend of paranormal and sci-fi as we have these dealings with ghosts and spirits and the afterlife, but also so much of the story is reliant on technology and science, so it's just really unique. The plot is so gripping and entertaining, and it has this super adorable swooning romance that make me think back to all of the couples that I just fell in love with when I was 17 and reading YA for the first time. I love this book so much. It was such a surprise to have it be this impactful, where I literally can't stop thinking about it for an entire year. But I will absolutely be rereading it next year and for all Christmases to follow because it has become a very special book to me and one of my all-time favorites, no joke whatsoever. The next book I read in the month of December is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Now, I do already have a reading vlog for Queen of Air and Darkness that is spoiler-free, so if you want to get some of my more detailed reactions as they are occurring while I'm reading the book, I will link that down below. And I, of course, have a full spoiler-filled discussion that is coming to you very soon. It'll likely be the next video. I'm editing it right now. It is so long, but I hope you guys love it because it is one of my favorite reviews I think I've ever filmed. Where do I even start with you? Like, I have been waiting for you for so long, and I finished you. I read every page of you, and now we're here in front of my camera to be discussed on my channel. That was the nerdiest thing I have ever done on my channel. Wow, I'm embarrassed. I adored this book so much. It was magnificent in my opinion. I feel like the only word I could really use to fully capture my experience reading Queen of Air and Darkness is just mind-blowing. I had a lot of expectations that were completely satisfied, and it even went beyond that to places that I could not have dreamt of in my wildest dreams, which just make me feel so wonderful because Cassie Clare is such a talented author and she keeps proving it with every single book she writes. Queen of Air and Darkness has definitely been Cassie's most political series, and Queen of Air and Darkness just takes that to another level. I really enjoyed getting to see the expansion of the Clave and its dynamics between different downworlders and where things go in this story. Y'all are just not ready for by the end. I feel like Queen of Air and Darkness is also the darkest book in the series because of the way it deals with grief. It just comes from such a place of hopelessness in the beginning that I think is so raw and authentic, especially the fact that we have like so many different characters that are all grieving at the same time. It was just really beautiful to unravel, and I felt so much truth in what Cassie was writing. Listen, it is so hard to talk about this book without spoilers because so much of my thoughts on this book are founded on very specific details and scenes and moments that will be discussed in full in my review. I did find a few more issues with Queen of Air and Darkness than I have with other Cassie Clare books in the past. Namely, I think there were a few moments that were a little bit too convenient, relied a little bit too heavily on nostalgia, which I notice is a theme in some of Cassie's more recent works. And I do also believe that there are a few events in the story that deserved more consequences than what we were given. I just feel like I needed a little bit more conflict. What can I say? I think this is such a satisfying conclusion. I had so much fun reading it and so much pain as well. And it does a fantastic job setting up for the Wicked Power series, which I'm so crushed we won't have for another 3 years, but there are so many things I can't wait to explore in future books that Cassie has laid for us in this beauty. So I'm so happy with it, and I can't wait to share my full spoiler-filled thoughts on it with you guys. The final book I read in the month of December, and the final book I finished in 2018, is Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend, which is the second book in the Morgan Crow series. If you have not heard of the first book, Nevermore, it follows an 11-year-old girl named Morrigan who has lived her entire life believing that she is cursed, when one day she is whisked away by a man named Jupiter Moon who takes her to this place called Nevermore, where she is competing in this grand tournament to win a place in the Wondrous Society. The setting and the world of Nevermore is just so wonderful and whimsical. The magic system where each person has a different knack, which is really unique, and there are different levels to each powers. It's just very complex and well structured, and I can't wait to explore more in the future books of this series. I really love the writing style in this book. It's almost as if the prose like jumps off the page out of excitement when you're reading it. It's so easy to fall into, and you'll just want to devour every minute of it. I pretty much have all the same things to say about Wondersmith as Nevermore. It's just really fun and imaginative and exciting. It has really stolen my heart as like one of my favorite middle grade reads of all time. Wondersmith was definitely a little bit darker than Nevermore, which I really enjoyed seeing, and I'm very intrigued to see how this balance of like lighthearted fun and excitement is balanced off with some of the darker things that are working underneath this story and how that's explored in future books. And the other thing is, I feel like the characters could use just like a tiny bit more development. Like I'm not saying that the characters in this book are underdeveloped, because I think they are really charming, and I love the dynamics and how they grow in Wondersmith specifically, and I do think they all have unique personalities that are really lovable. And the villain in this series is so fantastic. I think he might actually be one of my favorite characters, just because he is so manipulative and calculated and like also charming and all the good things that make a great villain. But part of me just like wants to know these characters a little bit better, and for them to have a little bit more going on in each of their own individual lives that are explored in the story, because I sometimes feel like this wonderful plot that I love so much can sometimes overtake them, and I just want to see a little bit more from them, but it's not something that I think really takes down the story overall. I think Wondersmith and Nevermore are really fantastic, and everyone should absolutely read them. So that concludes my cozy November and December reading wrap-up. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know your favorite books that you read either in November or December, or even of the full year, because I would love to know. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!